So listen, today's news is the true downside to subscription services, and I, as somebody who have been enjoying my time with Nintendo Switch Online, am also well aware that it is a subscription-based service, meaning you are not technically purchasing the content that you are playing as part of this service. And just like we've seen in media over the years, whether it be Xbox Game Pass, Netflix, Hulu, or anywhere else that is entirely a subscription-based model for enjoying your content, whether it be games or movies, we have these situations where over time, the possibility that not all of the content you were once able to enjoy as part of that subscription service is still there and active to this day. And while from a value dollar amount perspective, there is definitely an upside to subscription services, what we're talking about here today is probably the worst part of it. And unfortunately, for the first time, it has hit Nintendo Switch Online because there is officially, now updated and confirmed to be worldwide, a game going away from the service. Granted, it's a smaller one, and you might not even care about it, but it does open up this broad conversation and can of worms on whether or not we can firmly expect all of the games that are in Nintendo Switch Online as a whole today to carry forward into the future of this subscription service. And it has many online calling for the return of a classic service you probably know the name of, Virtual Console. So I want to break down all the details, talk about what the likelihood is of this happening potentially to other games on the service, whether or not there's ever a shot that Nintendo entertains the idea of an optional Virtual Console individual game purchase option like is actually available on some competitors' platforms that we will talk about, and talk about the state and overall health of the service as a whole as we talk about Nintendo officially rolling this forward into their next generation with Nintendo Switch 2. So we'll get on the same page with all of this info. Before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification to join Sunbro Nation if you're new here. And I want to first kick it off by hopping right over to VGC, where they do have the write-up on exactly what's taken place here. For the first time, Nintendo is delisting a game from the Switch Online library. The removal of Super Formation Soccer highlights that the Switch Online library isn't permanent. Since 2018, Nintendo has been re-releasing classic 8-bit and 16-bit games, making them available to Nintendo Switch Online subscribers. At the time of writing, there are around 315 games available on Switch Online, spanning the NES, SNES, Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, N64, Sega Mega Drive / Genesis libraries. However, Nintendo has now announced that for the first time it will be removing a game from Switch Online rather than adding one. On March 28th, Super Formation Soccer will be removed from Super Famicom SNES library, which is available to Switch Online members in Japan or elsewhere who download it from the Japanese eShop. Super Formation Soccer is known in the West as Super Soccer, which is also available in Switch Online's SNES library in North America and Europe. However, Nintendo has yet to announce the removal of Super Soccer from these regions, and that has now changed. We will cover that update right after finishing this article, but continuing on, you can see, while it remains to be seen whether Super Soccer will be removed from the Switch Online libraries in the West, the delisting of the Japanese version is nevertheless the first real indication that Switch Online's library is not a permanent repository, and while it's likely that every listed first-party Nintendo game will remain there until the entire service shuts down, there's always a chance, however slight, that certain third-party games could be removed at some point. Responding to the news on X, former Platinum Games co-founder and current Clover Studio founder Hideki Kamiya, who regularly posts about his love for classic games, criticized the move, asking for the return of Virtual Console service, which was available on the Wii, Wii U, and 3DS, and allowed individual games to be bought. Hey, I guess subscriptions are no good after all, Kamiya wrote. Seriously, bring back the Virtual Console, don't be so mean. Now, to then cover that Super Soccer will no longer be available in all regions of the world, you can see this post from Nintendo, which says, confirmed Super Soccer is being removed from Nintendo Switch Online in all regions on March 28th, with a screenshot highlighting exactly where it lists that. So it is not, unfortunately, a question of if, but rather a confirmation at this point that this game is going away. And listen, there are two ways you can look at this story. One, Super Soccer, not the biggest loss. Who really cares at the end of the day? It's one game going away from the service, not a big deal, and you just write it off as that. However, while in general I give Nintendo, I would say, a pass on a lot of the more anti-consumer moves that they sometimes make. I mean, we're still paying $60 for original Switch 1 launch games in the current market. There's no Nintendo Selects. Granted, they're still in this generation. Maybe that comes down the road. I give them the benefit of the doubt and understanding in a lot of situations, but I will say that this one sets a very bad precedent for the service because it is just taking away content at the end of the day, and it does send that message that the library of games we have, while I don't expect it to be any big Mario or Donkey Kong titles or things that are all truly owned by Nintendo first-party in-house software, I do think that this can, over the course of time, stem into, yeah, we got a lot of new exciting games as GameCube library gets added in, and the Wii library one day, and DS games, but then slowly these certain third-party games from the Game Boy are slipping away, or just here and there we are starting to see certain fan-beloved third-party titles quietly get removed from the service in these little update announcements that for whatever kind of licensing needed to be renewed, it just wasn't. And because you technically never purchased that game, that is just now one less piece of software you have playable on your Switch library of games, and it's just not a good look at the end of the day. And while overall, dollar for dollar, I do find the value for Nintendo Switch Online to be far more substantial than that of Virtual Console for me personally, because I don't know about you guys, but if you remember the Virtual Console prices on a lot of the games, for me, I was only buying the ones that I really absolutely loved and wanted to for sure complete from start to finish. And in Nintendo Switch Online with the subscription model, I do, to be fair, find myself going through games that I probably never would have bought if it was available for $10.99 or $14.99 on the Virtual Console service, whereas when it hits NSO, I'm already paying for that subscription. I'm going to check it out because it's a new benefit of the service as it drops in there. So there are things that I like about NSO. However, in this situation, it would be nice for us to have some kind of option to truly own the content that we do choose to add to our Switch libraries, which is actually where I would like to pivot the conversation a little bit and talk about one way that Sony is, I would say, doing this a little bit better than Nintendo, because while their service as a whole and the classic game library they have for PlayStation Plus, I don't think necessarily rivals Nintendo currently. It got started up with adding in classic games way more recently though as well. They have not had near as much time to add their big heavy hitter content to that classic libraries of collections of games. With Sony PlayStation Plus on the premium tier, mind you, and I'm well aware of the price gap. It's a high price gap. I mean, you're paying $159 a month last time I checked for the full regular retail cost of a 12-month subscription for their premium tier service, which gets you like all their cloud streaming and, you know, access to a large library of games. It's not just their classic games, but nonetheless, that's the tier you got to sign up for to get all their classic games in the subscription. But one feature that they have enabled is just the option to not be subscribed to PlayStation Plus at all and still purchase those games individually. And while I don't think we're going to see Nintendo ever go back to a true-up Virtual Console service, again, just because Nintendo Switch Online makes them too much reoccurring revenue from a month in, month out, and yearly basis, I do think that there's a chance, maybe, if Nintendo ever wants to give us the best of both worlds, have the option to purchase these games at an individual price point, one by one, for the big titles that we just want to ensure are always going to be in our library. If you are a fan of one of the games that may get delisted one day, it would be nice to have the option to pay 10 or 15 bucks and always permanently keep it on your Switch, so you know you don't have to worry about it just fading off into the abyss and not having it easily playable on your console anymore. So I would love to see that personally. I don't think it's likely, but you know, you do have to look around and read the room, and technically right now, Nintendo's biggest competition in the console gaming market, Sony, they do have that as an option for their classic library of games, and I would definitely not be opposed to Nintendo bringing that around as an option. Again, options are better. I think if they continue the value of the subscription service and adding games into the service frequently, that's great, but give us the option to buy them one-off, and then you never have to worry about the situation we are in right now with one of the games just getting announced for a delisting happening towards the end of March. So anyway, I want to pose the question to you guys, how you feel about this. Are you thinking it's a one-off game, not a big game at that, not a big deal here? Or do you think this does indeed kind of set the precedent that these games are not permanent as part of Nintendo Switch Online, and you really would also like to see Nintendo offer some kind of way to ensure that we can always play these games between Nintendo Switch and Switch 2? And what do you want to see from the service in Switch 2? Because while I feel like it's relatively healthy with the update schedule overall right now, clearly while we're missing some big N64 and GBA games, it is also starting to feel like it's time for another round of family of consoles. Let's get GameCube and DS and 3DS in there one day. Maybe Wii before 3DS. Who knows how they'll add those systems and in what order. But I think GameCube, DS, and maybe even something like Dreamcast would be in the conversation next from a logic-based perspective. When do you think we get the next big announcement for NSO? I do think that we could see something like new systems announced as soon as the April Nintendo Switch 2 Direct, but what do you think? And are you happy with the current state of NSO as we talk about things like delistings happening with this one game? Or are you not currently subscribed, and what would it take you to convince you to subscribe? And are you a fan of the option of Virtual Console coming back where we can one-off purchase games? Or do you think that's just wishful thinking and clearly Nintendo won't go back to a purchase model for their classic collection of digital games? But make sure you share all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below before you leave, regardless if we agree or disagree. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, turn your notification bell. And with that, I've been Sunbro, you've been Nation. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.